What would you sacrifice for a stranger? Betty Beltran never imagined that stopping in the rain would cost her everything, or that the man sprawled on that Atlanta sidewalk would become the most important person in her life. The rain came down in sheets, cold and relentless, as Betty Beltran rushed down Auburn Avenue, her secondhand pumps splashing through puddles that soaked through to her skin. She glanced at her phone. 7:52 a.m. 8 minutes to clock in at Boyer Global Holdings, where she'd been working as an administrative assistant for the past 14 months. The position wasn't her dream job, but it kept the lights on and provided the health insurance that covered her daughter Jada's asthma medication. "Excuse me," she muttered, weaving between briefcase-carrying executives who moved with the confidence of people who'd never worried about a late arrival. Her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. A notification from Jada's school. Another reminder about the $45 field trip fee she still hadn't paid. Betty's chest tightened. $45 might as well have been $400. Hello friends, welcome to our story. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to this new channel. We want to get 5,000 subscribed community members by this month end. Also, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Atlanta, London, maybe New York or Kingston? We would love to know. Now, let us begin. Single motherhood was a high-wire act without a net, and Betty had been wobbling for 3 years ever since Marcus walked out the door with a duffel bag and empty promises. Her supervisor, Carla Newton, had made her position crystal clear just last Friday. "One more tardy, Betty, and we're done here. I don't care what excuse you have. Life's tough for everyone." Betty turned onto Peachtree Street, picking up her pace despite her protesting lungs. That's when she heard it. A sharp crack, followed by the scatter of papers hitting wet pavement, and a man's groaned curse. 15 feet ahead, a figure in a tailored gray suit lay sprawled across the sidewalk, his leather briefcase split open beside him, documents bleeding ink in the rain. Around her, the morning rush parted like water around a stone. Glances, whispers, but no one stopped. Betty checked her phone again. 7:54 a.m. Her bus route ended in 4 minutes. Her job, her daughter's stability, her entire precarious life balanced on being in that building by 8 o'clock a.m. But the man on the ground, his face twisted in pain, rain soaking through his expensive suit, looked utterly alone in a crowd of hundreds. Sir, are you hurt?" Betty dropped to her knees beside him, the cold water seeping through her tights. Up close, she could see he was probably in his mid-40s, with close-cropped hair and the kind of bone structure that belonged on magazine covers. His charcoal suit, now smeared with mud and what looked like spilled coffee, probably cost more than her monthly rent. "I'm fine," he said through gritted teeth, trying to push himself up before falling back with a sharp inhale. "Just twisted my ankle." Betty noticed how his right foot angled unnaturally to the side. "You need an ambulance. Don't try to move." "No hospital," the man insisted, his voice carrying an edge of authority even through obvious pain. "I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Board members flying in from 3 states. Betty almost laughed at the bitter irony. "With respect, sir, you can't even sit up." His eyes, a striking gray that matched the storm clouds above, met hers. "I'll manage." "Not on that ankle, you won't." Betty was already dialing 911, ignoring his protest. As the dispatcher took her information, she began gathering the scattered papers, trying to protect them from the rain with her own body. That's when she saw it, embossed at the top of a letterhead in silver. Boyer Global Holdings. Maurice T. Boyer, Chief Executive Officer. Her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. You work at Boyer Global?" The words came out strangled. The man grimaced, adjusting his position against the building wall behind him. "I do. I'm Maurice Boyer." The pavement seemed to tilt beneath Betty's knees. She'd worked at Boyer Global for over a year and had never seen the CEO in person. He operated from the penthouse floor, a name on company-wide emails and an annual voice on their holiday message. The directory photo showed a man in a formal suit with a clean-shaven face. This Maurice Boyer, with 2 days of stubble and rain-darkened hair, looked more human, more vulnerable. "I work there too," Betty heard herself say. "Administrative assistant, marketing division." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, or just another wave of pain. "What's your name?" "Betty." Betty Beltran. Before he could respond, the ambulance rounded the corner, its siren cutting through the white noise of rain and traffic. Paramedics moved with efficient precision, confirming what Betty already knew. Likely a fractured ankle, possibly torn ligaments. Immediate transport required. As they loaded Maurice onto the stretcher, his hand shot out and caught Betty's wrist. His grip was stronger than she expected. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough. "Most people kept walking." Betty nodded, suddenly aware that her phone read 8:08 a.m. Her morning meeting started in 22 minutes, and Carla Newton didn't believe in second chances. "I hope you heal quickly, Mr. Boyer." "Maurice," he corrected, wincing as the paramedics lifted him, then quieter. Could you ride with me? Just until they get me settled?" "I hate hospitals more than I hate admitting I need help." Betty froze. This request would guarantee her termination. But something in Maurice Boyer's expression, a vulnerability that seemed so at odds with the untouchable CEO she'd imagined, pulled at something deep in her chest. How could she abandon the man who ultimately signed her paycheck when he was asking for basic human company? "Okay," she said, climbing into the ambulance. She fired off a quick text to her deskmate, Lisa. "Emergency. We'll be late. Please tell Carla." At Grady Memorial Hospital, time moved in a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells. Maurice was whisked away for x-rays, while Betty sat in the waiting area, watching her phone light up with messages. 8:35 a.m. Lisa's response came with a frowning emoji. "Carla's livid. She's writing you up." By 9:40 a.m., Maurice returned with a diagnosis: clean fracture requiring a cast and 6 weeks of limited mobility. Betty stayed, helping him navigate insurance forms and contact his assistant, a woman named Elaine, who sounded both concerned and exasperated. Betty learned that Maurice had been walking to work, a rare choice, wanting to clear his head before a contentious board meeting about company restructuring. "You should go," Maurice said, as the nurse finished wrapping his cast. "You've already sacrificed half your morning." Betty gathered her damp coat and purse. "I hope your ankle heals fast, and that your board meeting can be rescheduled." "Betty," Maurice called as she reached the curtain. His gray eyes held hers. "Thank you, really. Not many people would sacrifice their livelihood for a stranger." She managed to smile, though her stomach churned with dread. It was the right thing to do. When Betty finally walked into Boyer Global Holdings at 10:22 a.m., Carla Newton stood beside Betty's desk like a sentinel, arms crossed, her expression carved from ice. Lisa shot Betty a look that said, "I tried to warn you." "My office, now." Inside Carla's glass-walled box of an office, there were no pleasantries, no questions, no room for explanation. "This is your third documented late arrival in 4 weeks." Carla said, sliding a paper across her desk with the satisfaction of someone who'd been waiting for this moment. "Company policy is clear. 3 infractions constitute grounds for immediate termination." "Carla, I can explain. There was an accident. Someone was injured badly." "There's always something with you people," Carla cut her off, her tone dripping with condescension. "Always an excuse, always a crisis. I run a department, not a charity for single mothers who can't manage their personal lives." Betty's face burned. "That's not—" "I've already processed your severance. You have until noon to clear your desk." Betty stared at the termination notice, her vision swimming, the numbers blurred. Final paycheck, unused PTO, effective immediately. How would she pay rent? Jada's school fees? Her daughter's medication refill was due in 8 days. As she packed her belongings into a cardboard box that Lisa silently provided, a framed photo of Jada, her chipped coffee mug that said "World's Strongest Mom," a succulent that had somehow survived her black thumb, a strange calm settled over her shoulders. She had helped someone who needed her. If that cost her a job where basic human decency was treated as a moral failing, perhaps Boyer Global wasn't where she belonged anyway. What Betty couldn't know, as she rode the elevator down for what she thought was the last time, was that Maurice Boyer was at that very moment being wheeled into his office, his ankle freshly cast, demanding answers about the woman who'd sacrificed her morning to help him, and wielding the power to rewrite both their destinies. Betty stepped out of the Boyer Global Tower into air that had turned muggy and thick, the rain now just a memory of damp concrete. She shifted the cardboard box in her arms, 14 months of work reduced to objects that barely filled the container. Her phone rang almost immediately. Mrs. Alvarez, her neighbor, and Jada's after-school guardian. "Mija, you didn't call. Is everything okay at work?" Betty swallowed against the tightness in her throat, navigating toward the MARTA station. She couldn't afford a rideshare. Not today, maybe not for a long time. "I'm not at work anymore, Mrs. Alvarez. I got fired." Silence on the other end, then, "Kay? Fired? For what?" Betty explained while walking, her voice mechanical, as if describing someone else's tragedy. The man on the sidewalk, the hospital, the cold inevitability of Carla Newton's judgment. "That's evil," Mrs. Alvarez said, her accent thickening with emotion. "You help someone hurt, and they punish you? What kind of world is this?" "The real one," Betty said quietly, setting her box on the bench at the station. "Look, I'm going to start looking for work immediately, but I might need to reduce Jada's hours with you until—" "No," Mrs. Alvarez's voice was firm. "Jada stays with me, same as always. We figure out payment later, when you're back on your feet. Entiendes?" Tears burned Betty's eyes. "I can't ask you to—" "You didn't ask. I'm telling you. This is what neighbors do, what familia does." Her tone left no room for argument. "Now you go home, rest today. Tomorrow, you fight back." Betty thanked her and ended the call, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. The kindness felt like both a gift and a wound, proof that compassion existed, even as the world punished her for showing it. The train arrived, and Betty stepped aboard, her box balanced on her lap, unaware that at that very moment, 23 floors above the city, Maurice Boyer was asking his executive assistant a single question that would change everything. Find out why Betty Beltran isn't in the building, and find out now. The apartment Betty returned to that afternoon was small but clean, a third-floor walk-up in the old Fourth Ward that she'd stretched her budget to afford because of the good school district. As she set her termination box on the kitchen counter next to Jada's spelling homework, the weight of 3 years of struggle came crashing down. 3 years since Marcus walked out. She could still see him standing in this very kitchen, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, his face a mixture of guilt and relief. "I can't do this, Betty. I'm not cut out to be a father. I'm suffocating." Jada had been 6 years old, small enough to still believe her daddy was coming back from a work trip. He never did. Betty had cobbled together survival from the wreckage, a night shift at a diner, weekend cleaning jobs, finally landing the administrative position at Boyer Global that promised stability. 14 months of arriving early, staying late, proving she was more than her circumstances. All of it gone in a 10-minute conversation with a woman who saw single mothers as liabilities. Her phone buzzed. A text from the leasing office. Rent reminder. Due in 6 days. $1,450. She no longer had a plan to pay. Betty slid down the cabinet until she was sitting on the worn linoleum, her head in her hands. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator, a sound that suddenly felt ominous. How long before that stopped working? Before the lights went out? Before she had to pull Jada from the school where she'd finally made friends? The photo of Jada stared at her from the termination box, her daughter's gap-toothed smile captured at last year's school carnival. Betty had worked double shifts that week to afford the ticket price. Was it worth it? The question clawed at her. Was helping a stranger worth this? She thought of Maurice Boyer's gray eyes, the vulnerability in his voice when he'd asked her to stay. She thought of the dozens of people who'd walked past him like he was invisible. And she thought of the woman she wanted Jada to become, someone who stopped when others needed help. But what good was teaching your daughter values if you couldn't keep a roof over her head? That evening, when Mrs. Alvarez brought Jada home, Betty held her daughter tighter than usual. "Mama, you're squishing me," Jada giggled, squirming free. "Mrs. Alvarez said you came home early. Are you sick?" "No, baby, just a change at work." Betty forced brightness into her voice. "How was school?" As Jada chattered about her day, Betty caught Mrs. Alvarez's knowing look over her daughter's head. The older woman squeezed Betty's shoulder on her way out, leaving a covered dish of arroz con pollo on the counter. Another kindness Betty didn't know how she'd repay. That night, after Jada fell asleep curled around her favorite stuffed rabbit, Betty lay awake, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. She'd started a mental catalog of what she could sell: her laptop, the TV, maybe some of Marcus's tools still in the storage closet. She pulled up her bank account on her phone. $847.32. Severance would add another $200, but that barely covered rent and groceries. Jada's medication alone was $90. The numbers didn't add up. They never did. Kindness never goes unseen, Mrs. Alvarez had said. Betty wanted to believe that, needed to believe that, but lying in the dark, listening to her daughter's soft breathing, she wondered if the universe kept score at all, or if good people just lost more slowly than bad ones. Sleep finally came in restless fragments, her dreams a confused tangle of rain-soaked sidewalks and locked doors. When her phone rang at 8:47 a.m. the next morning, Betty almost didn't answer. Unknown number. Probably a creditor who'd somehow already heard she was unemployed, or a robocall about her car's extended warranty. But something, instinct, desperation, or fate, made her swipe to accept. Hello? Is this Betty Beltran? A woman's voice, professional and warm. Yes? Ms. Beltran, my name is Elaine Shaw. I'm the executive assistant to Maurice Boyer. A pause. Mr. Boyer would like to meet with you. Would you be available tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? Betty's breath caught. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. Was she in trouble for riding in the ambulance? Had Maurice discovered she'd been fired and wanted to apologize? Or worse, was this some formal reprimand, a legal liability she hadn't considered? Ms. Beltran, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. Betty's voice sounded distant to her own ears. Can I ask what this is regarding? Mr. Boyer prefers to discuss it in person. Elaine's tone was kind, but revealed nothing. Should I confirm you for 9 a.m.? Part fear, part disbelief, and beneath it all, a dangerous flutter of hope Betty tried desperately to suppress. Okay, she whispered. I'll be there. Betty stood outside Boyer Global Holdings the next morning, her palms damp despite the cool air. She'd worn her interview suit, the navy one she'd bought at a consignment shop 3 years ago, pressed until the creases were sharp enough to cut. Her reflection in the glass tower showed a woman trying to look confident while her heart hammered against her ribs. The lobby had never seemed so vast, so intimidating. Marble floors stretched like an ocean, and the ceiling soared 3 stories high, punctuated by a chandelier that probably cost more than her annual salary. Former salary. Betty Beltran? A security guard approached, his expression neutral, but not unkind. Ms. Shaw is expecting you. I'll escort you up. The elevator ride to the 23rd floor felt eternal. Betty watched the numbers climb, each one carrying her further from the world she knew, the cramped marketing bullpen on floor 3 where she'd spent 14 months answering phones and filing reports, into a realm she'd only heard whispered about. When the doors opened, Betty stepped into a different universe. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Atlanta skyline like a painting. The furniture was all clean lines and expensive leather. Fresh orchids bloomed on a reception desk made of glass and chrome. A woman in her 50s with silver hair and kind eyes approached, hand extended. Ms. Beltran, I'm Elaine Shaw. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Her handshake was firm and reassuring. Mr. Boyer is in his office. Right this way. Betty's legs felt unsteady as she followed Elaine down a corridor lined with modern art, the kind where you weren't sure if it was brilliant or a joke. They stopped at a set of double doors. Elaine knocked twice, then opened them. The office was stunning, a corner suite with panoramic views, minimalist decor, and enough square footage to fit Betty's entire apartment. And there, seated behind a desk with his right leg propped on an ottoman, cast visible beneath rolled-up suit pants, was Maurice Boyer. He looked different than he had on the rain-soaked sidewalk. His hair was neatly styled, his charcoal suit impeccable despite the casual cast, but his eyes, those gray eyes, held the same warmth she remembered. "Miss Beltran," he gestured to a chair across from him, "please sit." "You look nervous." Betty lowered herself into the chair, gripping her purse like a lifeline. "Because I am." Maurice's laugh was soft, almost self-deprecating. "So am I, if I'm honest. I've never had to formally thank someone for saving me before. I'm not entirely sure of the protocol." "You don't have to thank me," Betty said quietly. "Anyone would have, but they didn't." Maurice's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "I counted 17 people who walked past me that morning before you stopped. 17. He leaned forward slightly. "Elaine tells me you haven't been at work since that day. Are you taking time off?" Betty's throat tightened. Here it was, the moment she'd have to explain. "No, sir. I was terminated 2 hours after I left the hospital." Something flickered across Maurice's face, surprise, followed by a hardness that transformed his features. "Terminated? For what cause?" "Tardiness. It was my 3rd documented late arrival." Betty forced the words out evenly, refusing to let her voice crack. "My supervisor, Carla Newton, has a strict policy. Company rules are—" "I know the company rules. I wrote half of them." Maurice's voice had gone cold, controlled fury simmering beneath professional composure. "But I'm struggling to understand how you were fired for helping me. Walk me through exactly what happened." Betty explained. The morning rush, the accident, the choice to stay at the hospital, Carla's ice-cold dismissal. With each detail, Maurice's expression grew darker. "Carla fired you," he said slowly, each word deliberate, "for helping the CEO of this company after he was injured. She didn't know it was you. I tried to explain there was an accident, but that won't stand." Maurice reached for his phone, his movements sharp with barely contained anger. He dialed, waited. "Sharon? Maurice Boyer. I need Carla Newton's personnel file pulled immediately, and I need you in my office in 10 minutes. He paused. "Also, pull the file for Betty Beltran." "Yes, that's correct. Terminated 2 days ago." He ended the call and looked at Betty, his expression softening slightly. "I'm sorry you're caught in this." "It's not your fault. It's my company. That makes it my responsibility." Maurice set his phone down. "But I'm not just fixing a wrong, Betty. I'm correcting a much bigger problem." "I don't understand." "This company has forgotten what matters. We chase profits, efficiency, metrics, and somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing people as people." He gestured toward the window, toward the city below. "You showed me something on that sidewalk. Compassion, integrity, the kind of character that can't be taught in leadership seminars or MBA programs." Betty's pulse quickened. "Mr. Boyer—" "Maurice, please." "Maurice," she corrected. "I appreciate you getting my job back, truly, but—" "I'm not getting your job back." Maurice's eyes held hers. "I'm offering you a different one. Executive Liaison for Corporate Outreach. You'd work directly with me, developing community programs, employee welfare initiatives, the human side of this corporation that we've neglected." He named a salary that made Betty's vision blur, more than double what she'd been making. "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Why me?" Maurice smiled, and for the first time, Betty saw past the billionaire CEO to the vulnerable man who'd clutched her wrist on that stretcher. "Because character can't be trained, Betty, and the world needs more people who stop in the rain." Betty's first day in her new role began with an office that still smelled of fresh paint and new furniture. Floor 17, not the executive penthouse, but worlds away from the cramped marketing bullpen where she'd spent 14 months elbow to elbow with 6 other assistants. Now she had a desk with a view, a computer that didn't freeze every 10 minutes, and business cards that read Executive Liaison for Corporate Outreach in elegant serif font. She ran her fingers over the embossed letters, half convinced she'd wake up back in her apartment with an eviction notice. Imposter syndrome? Maurice appeared in her doorway, navigating on crutches with surprising grace. "It's normal. I felt it for my first 3 years as CEO." Betty looked up, managing a nervous smile. "You're a Boyer. You founded this company with your father. Which made it worse. Everyone assumed I was handed everything. He moved into her office, settling into the chair across from her desk. Here's your first assignment. I want you to audit every community program we currently fund, not the glossy annual report version. The truth. What's working, what's performative, and what we're doing just to check boxes. Over the next 3 weeks, Betty dove into her role with a determination that surprised even herself. She visited after-school programs in East Atlanta, scholarship recipients at Georgia State, workforce training centers in Vine City. She talked to teenagers who'd received Boyer Global grants, single mothers in job placement programs, formerly incarcerated men learning coding skills. And she took notes, real notes, not about metrics and ROI, but about the 17-year-old who cried when describing how a scholarship meant she could stay in school instead of working full-time. About the program coordinator who stretched a $50,000 grant to feed twice as many kids by building partnerships Boyer Global had never bothered to track. We're funding a youth center that's been closed for 8 months, Betty told Maurice during their first project review meeting. But we're still cutting checks. The director retired, no one replaced him, and apparently nobody here noticed. Maurice's jaw tightened. How much? $80,000 this year alone. And no one caught it? We were measuring outputs, not outcomes. Betty pulled up a spreadsheet. We counted dollars spent, not lives changed. It's easy to miss what you're not actually looking at. Maurice leaned back, studying her. You're good at this. Betty felt heat rise to her cheeks. I just asked questions. That's exactly what makes you good at it. Their working relationship developed a rhythm. Morning emails about projects, afternoon strategy sessions that occasionally ran long, and lunches, casual at first, grabbed sandwiches in his office while reviewing proposals. That gradually became something more intentional. It was during one of these lunches, 3 months into Betty's tenure, that Maurice's professional mask slipped. Can I ask you something? He set down his fork, his expression unguarded. Do you ever feel like success costs more than it's worth? Betty considered the question, recognizing the vulnerability beneath it. Sometimes. Why? I built this company with my father. He died 6 years ago, right when we were about to go public. Maurice's voice was quiet. I've spent every day since trying to prove I could carry his legacy. But somewhere in all that proving, I forgot how to just be human. Is that why your engagement ended? Betty asked gently. She'd heard whispers. The society wedding that never happened, the investor's daughter who'd walked away. Maurice nodded. Vanessa said I was married to the company. She wasn't wrong. I canceled our vacation 4 times, missed her gallery opening because of a conference call. She finally asked me if I even knew what made her happy anymore. He met Betty's eyes. I couldn't answer. That must have hurt. The worst part? I felt relieved when she left. What kind of person feels relief? An honest one, Betty said. Sometimes we build lives we think we're supposed to want, and it takes losing them to realize they never fit. Maurice stared at her, something shifting in his expression. No one talks to me like this. Everyone here treats me like I'm made of glass and money. Would you prefer I lie? God, no. His laugh was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time that day. Please don't ever start. But not everyone appreciated Betty's rise. Carla Newton, demoted from supervisor to senior associate after Maurice's investigation, revealed a pattern of discrimination complaints. Watched Betty's success with undisguised resentment. She'd kept her job, barely, but her power had evaporated. In the break room, at happy hours Betty was too busy to attend, Carla planted seeds with surgical precision. Interesting how quickly she moved up, isn't it? She'd say, voice dripping false concern. From fired to executive in one conversation with the CEO. Makes you wonder what she said in that hospital room. I heard they have lunch together. Alone, every week. Well, we all know how single mothers get ahead in the corporate world. The whispers spread like water finding cracks, quiet, persistent, and corrosive. Betty remained oblivious, too focused on building programs that mattered, too energized by work that finally felt purposeful. But Maurice noticed. And in the careful way he'd begun watching Betty move through his world, her warmth with colleagues, her fierce advocacy for communities his company had ignored, the way she made him remember why he'd wanted to build something meaningful in the first place, he realized the rumors weren't entirely wrong. Something was growing between them. He just hadn't admitted it yet. The shift was subtle at first, so subtle Betty almost convinced herself she was imagining it. Conversations that stopped when she entered the break room, colleagues who suddenly found urgent reasons to skip meetings she'd organized. The way Jennifer from finance, who'd been warm and chatty just weeks ago, now responded to Betty's emails with terse one-word replies. It was Lisa, her former desk mate from the marketing bullpen, who finally pulled her aside after a community partnership presentation. "Betty, we need to talk." Lisa glanced around the empty conference room. "People are saying things." "What kind of things?" Lisa's discomfort was palpable. "That you and Maurice, that there's something inappropriate going on, that you're using him to climb the ladder." Betty felt like she'd been slapped. "That's insane. We work together, that's all." "I know that, but Carla's been talking. She filed a formal complaint with HR last week, said you're manipulating the CEO, that your promotion was based on personal favoritism rather than qualifications." Lisa touched Betty's arm. "I'm telling you because you need to know what you're up against." That afternoon, Betty sat through a vendor meeting barely hearing a word. Around the conference table, she noticed the glances. Quick, assessing, judgmental. Mark from legal whispered something to Sandra from operations. Sandra's eyes flicked to Betty, then away. She'd felt this before. The weight of being underestimated, of having her competence questioned, of being reduced to stereotypes that had nothing to do with her work and everything to do with what people assumed about Black single mothers who dared to succeed. After the meeting, Betty returned to her office and closed the door. She sat in the dark for 20 minutes, trying to decide if fighting was worth it or if she should just quietly resign before the whispers became shouts. Her phone buzzed. "Maurice, Conference Room B. Now, please." Betty's stomach dropped. Had HR gotten to him? Was this the end? She found Maurice standing at the head of the conference table. His crutches leaned against a chair, his expression thunderous. Two senior executives, David Chen and Robert Patterson, sat with matching expressions of chastened discomfort. "Betty, come in." Maurice's voice was cold steel. "These gentlemen have something to say to you." David cleared his throat, not meeting her eyes. "Ms. Beltran, I apologize for my unprofessional comments earlier today." Betty looked between them, confused. "I don't understand." "I overheard them in the executive lounge," Maurice cut in, his anger barely controlled. "Discussing your special arrangement with me, making crude jokes about how you earned your position." His eyes never left the two men. "Go on, David. Tell her exactly what you said." David's face had gone red. "I made inappropriate insinuations about your relationship with Mr. Boyer." "It was unprofessional and unfounded." "It was disgusting," Maurice corrected. "And it stops now. Not just from you two, from everyone in this building." He addressed them with the full force of his authority. "Betty Beltran was promoted because she has more integrity in her little finger than most of this executive team has collectively. If compassion is a weakness, then this company's built on the wrong foundation, and I'll burn it down and start over." The silence was absolute. "You're both suspended for 1 week without pay. HR will be in touch about mandatory sensitivity training. Now get out of my sight." After they left, Betty stood frozen, humiliation and gratitude warring in her chest. "I'm sorry," Maurice said quietly. "I should have seen this coming." "You didn't need to do that." Betty's voice was thick. "Now they'll just say you proved their point, that you're protecting me because we're what? Colleagues? Friends?" Maurice moved closer, his expression softening. "Let them talk, Betty. I know what you are. A woman who stopped in the rain when no one else would. A person who sees people, not profit margins. Someone who makes me remember why I wanted to build something meaningful in the first place." Betty felt tears prick her eyes. This job was supposed to change my life. I didn't expect it to come with a target on my back. Then we changed the culture that put it there. Maurice's voice was firm. I've been running this company on autopilot, measuring success by numbers on a spreadsheet. You've shown me what we've been missing, the human cost of every decision, the communities we've ignored, the values we've abandoned. He paused. I'm not going to let small-minded people punish you for making me a better leader. Betty nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you for having my back. Always, Maurice said, and the word felt like a promise. What neither of them knew was that Carla Newton sat in her demoted office 3 floors below, finger hovering over the send button on an email to Marcus Reed, a reporter at the Atlanta Business Chronicle known for his appetite for corporate scandal. The subject line read, Boyer Global CEO's secret affair with former assistant, the single mom who seduced her way to the top. Attached were carefully curated photos, Maurice and Betty having lunch, walking together after a community event, his hand briefly touching her shoulder in what Carla had cropped to look intimate. The truth didn't matter. The narrative was already written. Carla smiled and pressed send. The Whisper campaign was about to become a wildfire. The article went live at 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Betty was making Jada's lunch when her phone began vibrating with an intensity that made her stomach drop. Text after text, voicemails piling up, her email inbox erupting with notifications. She opened the first message, from Lisa. Betty, I'm so sorry. Check the Atlanta Business Chronicle. Call me. Her hand shook as she pulled up the website. The headline blazed across the screen in bold letters. Billionaire CEO's new favorite, the single mom who stole his heart. Inside Maurice Boyer's controversial romance. Below it, a photo she remembered from a community center ribbon cutting. Maurice's hand on her shoulder, both of them smiling. The angle made it look intimate, conspiratorial. Another image showed them having lunch in his office, cropped so close it looked like they were alone in a romantic dinner setting rather than working through grant proposals. Betty's vision swam as she read the opening paragraph. Sources inside Boyer Global Holdings allege that recently promoted executive liaison Betty Beltran, 34, leveraged a chance encounter with CEO Maurice Boyer to secure a lucrative position, and possibly more. The single mother, who was reportedly fired for tardiness just days before her dramatic promotion, now enjoys unprecedented access to the billionaire executive, raising questions about the nature of their relationship and the company's commitment to ethical hiring practices. The article was a masterpiece of insinuation, never stating anything directly actionable, but painting every fact in the most damaging light possible. Her termination, the hospital visit, her rapid promotion, their working lunches, all of it twisted into a narrative of manipulation and impropriety. Mama? Jada appeared in the kitchen doorway, backpack already on. Are you okay? You look sad. Betty forced a smile, quickly closing her phone. I'm fine, baby. Just work stuff. Ready for school? But when Betty dropped Jada off 20 minutes later, she felt the stares. Other parents clustered near the entrance, phones in hand, glancing at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to judgment. One mother she'd chatted with at pickup for months suddenly became fascinated with her own child's shoelaces. Jada's friend Maya ran up, ponytail bouncing. Jada! My mom says your mom is dating a billionaire. Is that true? Are you going to be rich? Betty watched her daughter's face crumple with confusion. I don't... Mama? Go to class, sweetheart. We'll talk after school. Betty kissed Jada's forehead, feeling the weight of every watching eye. By the time she reached Boyer Global, news vans were parked outside. A reporter shoved a microphone at her as she hurried past. Ms. Beltran, is it true you and Maurice Boyer are romantically involved? Did you use your relationship to secure your position? Betty pushed through without answering, her cheeks burning with humiliation. Inside, the office was a minefield of whispers and averted gazes. Betty went straight to Maurice's floor, bypassing Elaine's attempt to intercept her. Maurice was on the phone, his expression grim. He held up a finger, one moment, but Betty couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. This isn't what I wanted." Her voice cracked, tears streaming freely now. "I just needed a job. I just wanted to provide for my daughter and do good work. That's all." Maurice ended his call mid-sentence. "Betty, they're saying I seduced you, that I'm some opportunist who used you to climb a ladder I had no business being on in the first place." She swiped at her tears, angry at herself for crying. "Jada's friends are asking if we're rich now. Parents are staring at me like I'm something shameful. I can't do this." Maurice moved toward her, his limp barely noticeable now despite the cast. "Listen to me. This is Carla's doing. HR traced the leak. She sent those photos to the reporter with a fabricated story. It doesn't matter where it came from. It's out there now." Betty's laugh was bitter. "Maybe I should just resign. Make it go away." "No." Maurice's voice was firm. "Absolutely not. You've done nothing wrong." "Haven't I? Maybe they're right. Maybe I did move too fast, get too close." "Stop." Maurice caught her hands, his gray eyes fierce. "You earned every bit of your position. Your work speaks for itself. The youth center expansion, the scholarship redesign, the community partnerships that actually matter, that's all you. Then why does it feel like I'm drowning?" "Because we live in a world that can't accept that a Black single mother might succeed on merit. That can't believe a CEO and a colleague might have a meaningful professional relationship without it being something sordid." His jaw tightened. "I'm calling a press conference. Today. I'm setting the record straight." "Maurice, you can't." "I can, and I will." He released her hands, already reaching for his phone. "Betty Beltran is the reason this company remembers it has a soul. I'm not letting anyone destroy her because of gossip and prejudice." An hour later, Maurice stood before a podium on the ground floor, cameras flashing, reporters jostling. Betty watched from the side, her heart in her throat. "Betty Beltran is an exceptional professional whose integrity and vision have transformed our community engagement initiatives," Maurice said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. "Any suggestion that her position was granted through anything other than merit is categorically false and deeply offensive. I stand behind her completely." The questions came rapid fire. "Are you romantically involved? Did the board approve this promotion? Will you be stepping down?" From the back of the room, David Monroe, the board chairman, stepped forward. His expression was granite. "Mr. Boyer, the board requests an emergency meeting immediately." In the 20th floor conference room, 7 board members sat with folded hands and disappointed expressions. "The optics are disastrous," David said flatly. "We're recommending you distance yourself from Ms. Beltran, publicly, transfer her to a different division, or accept her resignation." "No," Maurice said simply. "Then we'll have no choice but to ask for your resignation as CEO." The room went silent. Maurice stood, placing both palms on the table. "I'd rather lead with integrity than rule through fear. If this board values reputation over character, then perhaps I'm not the leader you need." His voice was steady, certain. "But I won't sacrifice a good person to protect a comfortable lie." He walked out, leaving 7 stunned board members in his wake. Outside, Betty waited, her eyes red-rimmed. "What did they say?" "They asked me to choose." Maurice met her gaze. "I chose you. I chose truth." "Maurice, you could lose everything." "Then I'll lose it, knowing I stood for something that mattered." He smiled, tired, but genuine. "We'll figure it out, Betty. Together." For the first time that terrible day, Betty felt something besides shame. She felt hope. Carla Newton made her fatal mistake on a Friday afternoon, 3 days after Maurice's press conference. Watching the public tide refuse to turn against Betty the way she'd planned, Carla grew desperate. The board hadn't forced Maurice out. If anything, his defiant stance had sparked admiration in certain circles. Think pieces about leadership with conscience and standing by your team were beginning to surface. It wasn't supposed to go this way. So Carla did what cornered people do. She doubled down. She leaked a second batch of documents to Marcus Reed at the Atlanta Business Chronicle, internal emails she claimed would prove Betty had been manipulating Maurice from the start. Messages where Betty requested meetings, asked for his input on projects, suggested lunch to discuss strategy. "See for yourself," Carla wrote in her anonymous tip. "She orchestrated every interaction. This was calculated from day one." But Carla, in her fury, forgot to scrub the metadata. And she forgot about one crucial email thread she'd accidentally included. One where she instructed her former marketing team to document every time Betty was late, to note every personal phone call, to build a case for termination regardless of performance quality. "We need to clean house of these single mother types," Carla had written to another supervisor. "They're always unreliable, always have excuses. Let's make an example before it becomes a pattern." Marcus Reed, to his credit, called Boyer Global's legal team before publishing anything. Within 2 hours, Sharon Kim from HR was in emergency session with the company's attorneys. By Monday morning, Carla was escorted from the building by security. The Chronicle published a retraction and apology the same day, followed by a new story. Boyer Global executive fired for discrimination, the real scandal behind the rumors. This time, the emails told the truth. Carla's vendetta, her systematic harassment, the calculated campaign to destroy Betty's reputation after her own demotion, the prejudice that had motivated it all. Betty's phone exploded again, but this time with apologies, offers of support, and interview requests from outlets wanting to tell the real story. The narrative had flipped entirely. Overnight, Betty transformed from controversial figure to symbol of resilience, a single mother who'd survived workplace discrimination and emerged with grace. "I don't want to be a symbol," Betty told Maurice in his office, staring at yet another interview request. "I just want to do my job." "Then do it," Maurice said gently. "Let the noise fade. Let's focus on the work that matters." And they did. Over the next 2 months, Betty and Maurice became a formidable team. They launched the Boyer Community Foundation, funded with $50 million of Maurice's personal wealth. They restructured every community program the company sponsored, eliminating performative initiatives and investing in grassroots organizations that produced real change. They visited sites together, youth centers in struggling neighborhoods, job training programs for returning citizens, scholarship recipients at HBCUs. Maurice watched Betty in these spaces, saw how she connected with people, how she listened without performing, how she translated their needs into actionable strategy. One afternoon, at a community center in Mechanicsville, Maurice stood back as Betty knelt beside a 7-year-old girl struggling with homework. Betty's patience was infinite, her encouragement genuine, her smile radiant. The little girl threw her arms around Betty's neck when she finally solved the math problem. "You should be a teacher," the girl said. "I'm learning from you," Betty replied. Maurice felt something shift in his chest, a recognition so profound it stole his breath. This wasn't professional admiration anymore. This wasn't gratitude for good work or respect for a colleague's talent. This was something far more dangerous and infinitely more real. He'd spent years building walls around his heart, convinced that vulnerability was weakness, that emotional connection was a luxury CEOs couldn't afford. Vanessa had called him hollow, his father had called it focus, Maurice had called it survival. But watching Betty, her warmth, her authenticity, the way she moved through the world with open hands and an open heart, despite every reason to close herself off, Maurice realized he'd been protecting himself from the wrong thing. He hadn't been guarding against heartbreak. He'd been guarding against feeling anything at all. That evening, after a board meeting where they presented the Foundation's 6-month plan to unanimous approval, Maurice and Betty stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows in his office, watching the sun set over Atlanta. "We make a good team," Betty said softly. "We do." Maurice turned to look at her, really look at her, the way late sun caught the gold in her brown skin, the slight smile that played at her lips, the quiet strength in her posture. "Betty, I need to tell you something." She turned, her expression open, curious. "You didn't just save me that morning on the sidewalk. You saved me from becoming someone I didn't want to be." His voice was low, honest. You reminded me what humanity looks like, what integrity costs, what courage means. Betty's eyes glistened. Maurice, I'm not saying this as your boss, he continued, needing her to understand. I'm saying this as a man who's been half alive for 6 years and didn't realize it until a woman stopped in the rain. The space between them felt electric, charged with possibility and fear and hope. I see you too, Betty whispered, not the CEO everyone else sees, the person behind all that armor, the man who cares so deeply he's terrified to show it. Maurice smiled, and for the first time in years, it reached all the way to his soul. What do we do about this? We take it slow, Betty said, her smile matching his. We do it right. We protect what we've built. Together? Together. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle like stars brought down to earth. Inside, 2 people who'd found each other in the rain stood together, watching the darkness transform into something beautiful. The fire had burned away the lies. What remained was truth, hard-won and worth protecting. The ballroom at the St. Regis Atlanta glittered like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across tables draped in champagne silk. Centerpieces of white orchids and gold-dusted branches created small forests on every surface. 500 guests, corporate leaders, philanthropists, community organizers, and scholarship recipients filled the space with elegant conversation and the soft clink of champagne flutes. Betty stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, watching her vision come to life with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. She'd spent 3 months planning the Boyer Community Foundation's inaugural gala, obsessing over every detail. The menu featured dishes from Black-owned Atlanta restaurants. The entertainment was provided by students from the youth centers they funded. Every element told a story about community, transformation, and second chances. You did it, Elaine said, appearing at Betty's elbow with a knowing smile. This is stunning. We did it, Betty corrected, though her chest swelled with satisfaction. She wore a floor-length gown in deep emerald, borrowed from a designer who'd insisted on dressing her after reading her story. Her hair was swept up, her mother's pearl earrings catching the light. Jada, in a junior bridesmaid dress of ivory lace, was somewhere in the crowd with Mrs. Alvarez, probably eating too much cake. Has Maurice seen the final setup? Betty asked. Elaine's smile turned mysterious. Oh, he's seen it. He's very pleased. Before Betty could question the odd tone, the lights dimmed. A spotlight found the stage where Maurice stood at the podium, impossibly handsome in a tailored tuxedo, his ankle fully healed now, no trace of the injured man from that rainy morning 9 months ago. 9 months. It felt like a lifetime and a heartbeat all at once. Good evening, Maurice began, his voice carrying easily through the sound system. Thank you all for being here tonight. We've gathered to celebrate the launch of the Boyer Community Foundation, but more importantly, to celebrate the people who've shown us what real leadership looks like. Betty moved to stand near the back, wanting to observe rather than be observed. A year ago, I thought I knew what it meant to run a successful company, Maurice continued. I measured everything in quarters and profit margins. I confused efficiency with excellence. And I forgot. He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found Betty. I forgot that the heart of any organization is its humanity. Betty's breath caught. This wasn't the speech they'd rehearsed. Last February, on a rainy Monday morning, I slipped on a sidewalk in downtown Atlanta. I was rushing to a board meeting, too important to watch where I was going. When I fell, injured and embarrassed, dozens of people walked past me. His voice softened. But one woman stopped. The spotlight swung, finding Betty at the back of the ballroom. She froze, suddenly aware of 500 pairs of eyes on her. Betty Beltran didn't know who I was. She only knew someone needed help, and she had a choice. Keep running to save her job, or stop running to save a stranger. Maurice's eyes never left hers. She chose compassion, and that choice cost her everything. Betty felt tears prick her eyes as Maurice recounted the story, her firing, her reinstatement, the scandal, the truth emerging. but he told it differently than the newspapers had, with a focus not on the drama, but on the principle beneath it. Betty taught me that character isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when no one would blame you for walking away. Maurice gestured to the screens flanking the stage, which now showed photos of their work, community centers they'd renovated, scholarship recipients in graduation caps, job training programs changing lives. Everything we're celebrating tonight exists because one woman remembered what I'd forgotten, that we're only as strong as our compassion for each other. The applause started slowly, then built like a wave. People rose to their feet, 500 bodies standing in recognition. Betty stood paralyzed, tears streaming freely now as the ovation washed over her. Maurice descended from the stage, moving through the crowd toward her. When he reached her, he took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I hate you right now," Betty whispered, laughing through tears. "I know," Maurice said, smiling. "But you deserve this, every bit of it." The gala continued with dinner, dancing, and testimonials from foundation beneficiaries. Betty moved through it in a daze, accepting congratulations and hugs, watching Jada dance with other children under the chandelier light, feeling for the first time like maybe she'd truly earned her place in this world. Near midnight, as the crowd thinned and cleanup crews began their work, Maurice found Betty on the terrace overlooking the city. The November air was crisp but not cold, and Atlanta sprawled below them like a constellation brought to earth. "Hiding?" Maurice asked, joining her at the railing. "Recovering," Betty smiled, turning to face him. The city lights caught in his gray eyes, making them shine like silver. That was quite a speech. It was the truth. Maurice moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something clean, something that felt like safety. "Betty, there's something I need to say, something I should have said months ago." Her heart began to race. "Maurice, you didn't just save me that morning," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You saved the man I was losing. I'd become someone I didn't recognize, cold, calculating, disconnected from everything that mattered. I thought that's what success required." He reached up, gently brushing a stray curl from her face. "Then you knelt in the rain beside a stranger, and you showed me who I wanted to be." Betty's breath shuddered. "I never expected gratitude. I just wanted fairness. A chance to do good work and take care of my daughter." "You got so much less than you deserved," Maurice said. "And you still chose kindness. Every single day, even when the world punished you for it." "Not the whole world." Betty's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally, perfectly. "You saw me, really saw me, not what people assumed about me." "I see you," Maurice confirmed, his other hand coming up to cup her face. "I see your strength and your grace, your fierce love for Jada, the way you make everyone around you want to be better. I see you, Betty Beltran, and I—" He stopped, emotion closing his throat. "Say it," Betty whispered. "I'm falling in love with you," Maurice breathed. "Maybe I have been since the moment you refused to let me crawl through the rain like an idiot." Betty laughed, the sound bright and free. And then she was kissing him, soft at first, then deeper. 9 months of restraint and respect and growing connection finally given permission to bloom. When they broke apart, both breathless, Maurice rested his forehead against hers. "Is this okay?" he asked. "We don't have to rush. It's perfect," Betty said. "We're perfect. Messy and complicated and absolutely perfect." Above them, the stars were invisible beneath city light. But here, on this terrace, in each other's arms, they'd found something brighter than any constellation. They'd found home. 1 year later, the dedication ceremony for the Beltran Initiative drew a smaller crowd than the gala, but every face that mattered was there. Betty stood before the freshly painted community center in West End, a renovated warehouse that now housed childcare facilities, job training classrooms, legal aid offices, and emergency assistance resources, all designed specifically for single mothers navigating the impossible mathematics of survival. The sign above the entrance read, "The Beltran Initiative, because compassion changes everything." "I still can't believe you named it after me," Betty said to Maurice for the 100th time, shaking her head as reporters captured photos of the ribbon cutting. "I can't believe you're still surprised," Maurice replied, squeezing her hand. "This is your vision, your heart. It deserves your name." Jada stood between them in a sunshine-yellow dress, holding the oversized scissors they'd used to cut the ribbon. At 10 years old, she'd grown 3 inches and developed her mother's confident smile. Her latest report card, straight A's and a teacher's note praising her exceptional empathy and leadership, was magnetized to their refrigerator at home. Home. The words still felt miraculous. 6 months ago, Betty and Jada had moved into Maurice's Buckhead residence, a decision made carefully, slowly, with family counseling and long conversations about what it meant to blend their lives. Jada had her own suite with bookshelves Maurice had built himself, slightly crooked, endearingly imperfect, and a reading nook overlooking the garden. Mrs. Alvarez visited twice a week, teaching Maurice to make proper arroz con pollo and telling him stories about Betty's early struggles that made his heart ache with retroactive protectiveness. "Ready, baby?" Betty asked Jada. "Ready, Mama?" Together, they cut the ribbon. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Inside, the first cohort of 25 women waited. Women who'd been where Betty had been, who understood the terror of choosing between rent and medication, who'd been told they were excuses instead of human beings. Betty spent the next 2 hours touring them through the facilities, explaining the programs with the passion of someone who'd lived every word. Subsidized childcare, skills training, mental health support, emergency funds for those moments when the car breaks down or the electricity gets shut off, the moments that spiral into catastrophe without a safety net. "You really did all this?" one woman asked, a young mother with an infant on her hip, and exhaustion etched into her face. "We did this," Betty corrected. "It takes all of us. But yes, I fought for it. Because I remember what it feels like to drown." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You don't know what this means." But Betty did know. She knew exactly. As the sun began its descent, painting the Atlanta sky in shades of amber and rose, Betty and Maurice said their goodbyes and walked toward his car. Their fingers intertwined naturally now, a connection that had become as essential as breathing. "Successful launch?" Maurice asked. "Beyond my wildest dreams." Betty leaned into him slightly. "Did you see that woman with the twins? She's been sleeping in her car for 3 weeks. Now she has a place to stay, childcare while she interviews for jobs, and a community that won't let her fall. You gave her that. We gave her that." Betty stopped walking, turning to face him. "Maurice, I need you to understand something. This work, this foundation, everything we've built, it's not just me. You risked everything, your reputation, your position, your relationship with the board, and I'd do it again." Maurice cupped her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Every single time. You taught me that some things matter more than safety, more than comfort, more than what people think." A drop of water hit Betty's nose, then another. She looked up as the sky opened, rain falling in soft sheets that caught the fading sunlight and turned the world silver. "Oh no," Betty laughed. "We're going to get soaked." But Maurice wasn't moving. He stood in the rain, smiling at her with an expression so full of love it made her chest ache. "What?" Betty asked, rainwater already dampening her hair. "Funny how storms bring us where we belong," Maurice said softly. Betty's laugh was bright and free, the sound of a woman who'd walked through fire and emerged whole. She tilted her face toward the sky, letting the rain kiss her skin, remembering another storm, another version of herself, terrified and desperate, and convinced that kindness was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Only if you stop to help," she replied, meeting his eyes. Maurice pulled her close, and they kissed in the rain while the city moved around them, indifferent, relentless, beautiful. Above them, storm clouds promised more rain. Below them, the foundation they'd built promised hope. A car honked. Someone shouted congratulations. The world continued its chaotic spin. But here, in this moment, Betty Beltran understood something profound. Destiny wasn't something you waited for. It was something you chose, again and again, every time you stopped when others kept walking. Every time you extended your hand when it would be easier to keep it to yourself. She'd chosen compassion on a rain-soaked sidewalk, not knowing what it would cost or what it might return. It had cost her everything she thought she needed. It had given her everything she never knew she wanted. "Come on," Maurice said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." Home. To Jada, who was probably already pestering Mrs. Alvarez for dessert before dinner. To the life they'd built from rain and ruin and relentless hope. To tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. Betty squeezed his hand, and together they walked through the storm, not away from it, not fighting against it, but through it. The way you're supposed to. The way that leads you home. The end. In the end, Betty Beltran learned what her mother had tried to teach her years ago, that the right choice is rarely the easy one, but it's always the one you can live with. That compassion isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing a person can offer in a world that incentivizes cruelty, and that sometimes, when you stop in the rain for someone else, you're really saving yourself. Maurice Boyer learned that power without humanity is just noise, that the walls we build to protect ourselves become the prisons we can't escape, and that love, real love, asks you to be brave enough to be seen. And Jada? She learned that her mother was magic, the kind that doesn't need wands or spells, just a willing heart and the courage to stop when everyone else keeps walking. Some stories end where they begin. This one began in the rain, with a choice between convenience and compassion. It ends in the rain too, but this time with a woman who knows her worth, a man who sees her truth, and a love built on the kind of foundation that doesn't crumble when storms come, because storms always come. But so does the sun, and so do the people who stop to help. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as hopeful and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.